Hi, I'm Jody Sell, and this is for Seminar in Developmental Language Disorders. I'm doing a video presentation on a therapy technique in which I will demonstrate how I use the Nickelodeon show iCarly to target specific skills with students who have developmental language disorders, specifically autism spectrum disorders. One of the challenges that I've had in working with students on the spectrum, especially students at the middle school and high school levels, are finding motivational and age-appropriate activities. And the show iCarly on Nickelodeon is popular media. It's entertaining. I've noticed that when I use it with students, I see increased efforts, I see increased motivation, and it's something that really appeals to most students. So I'm going to go ahead and go through a few clips, at least, of the show iCarly and talk about how I use it in therapy. Okay, so in this very first opening scene, we have Principal Franklin, who's obviously dressed as a professional. He's in his office. He's laughing at something. We're not sure what it is as the audience. And a teacher comes in, and he stops laughing. Now, just in this introductory scene, there are a lot of different pieces of information we can collect if we're observing, or we can address if we're doing therapy. If we're observing, we can look to see if the client has laughed at the appropriate times. Sometimes our students will laugh at appropriate times, but we're not sure if they're laughing for the appropriate reason. So I usually check with my clients, why was that funny? And I can get some useful information to determine if they're understanding the language that's being used in the show. So we can also talk about nonverbal communication. I can, if I'm doing an observation, determine if a student is able to identify feelings. You know, he's happy, he's laughing, based on just facial expressions, gestures. And then talk about how now he's very serious, and then also explain the reasoning. Why did he change his demeanor? Why did his expression change when the teacher came in? So then we get into more of the meta-linguistics.
Have a seat. So, I understand you put some flyers in the school.
Yes, I did.
What?
Again, we can talk about the facial expression, the tone of voice as the principal is talking to the student. It's very stern, very serious. As Carly comes in, she's very serious. And I use this scene in contrast to a scene that's at the end of the show where she's doing her webcast and she's with her friends and she's very excited and she's dancing around and she's moving. The language she uses is much different. Her demeanor, gestures, everything is different.
There must be some adult in charge of her.
My older brother, Spencer.
Oh, yes. The artist.
He's
Another
a
good
great
example
artist.
of facial expression and tone of voice.
Sure that you can come up
It can also talk about turn-taking skills and how a conversation flows from one person to the next.
Well, I'm going to see Cuttlefish play live at the Hawthorne on Saturday.
Not anymore.
Aw, come on!
It's what you get for turning me into a hippopotamus.
I know it's Chris. Yeah, right?
So that's a perfect example of at the ending scene there where Carly corrects that it's not a hippopotamus, it's a rhinoceros, and the teacher is very upset. That is a great scene to talk about and discuss with students who have pragmatic difficulties, because we have to work through, well, why is the teacher upset? Does it really matter in that situation that she's corrected? Is that something that we really need to do? Because what could happen as a result? You could upset somebody even more than you already have. So there are some additional skills that I target when I'm using iCarly.
I can't believe I let you talk me into taking the blame for you. You had to. I've already been suspended once this semester. My God, you must have made him expel me. Well, here's an idea. What? Stop doing bad things! Hey, chill, relax. I will not chillax.
that is a great example of context clues for vocabulary. In this situation, we have to really dissect what's going on. You know, what would you typically say in a situation like this when your friend is really worked up about something and you want them to relax and think about the word, chill out and relax? Well, they created a new word, chillax. And if you're hanging out with your friends and you hear the word chillax, how can you figure out what it means?
I did, because you and I get to spend our entire Saturday here, videotaping kids' auditions for the talent show. Whatever. You know, anybody but me would punch you right in the head. Which is why you are my best friend. Good to know. Now, why are you mine?
This is also a good place to show empathy and to talk to students about putting yourself in somebody else's shoes and taking someone else's perspective. Again, that's something that I've noticed that students who have pragmatic difficulties have difficulty doing.
Because I'm a lovable person.
It's a good example of irony, which I can use with some of my higher level students on the spectrum or not.
You dropped this.
Thanks, but you...
I was gonna walk you home from school, but I couldn't find you. Hey.
This is actually a good point to talk about a situation that may be a little bit socially awkward. Obviously, his behavior seems a little off, and so it's a good spot to pause the show and talk about what seems off about him and see if the students can identify what might be explained possibly as strange. We can also look at this scene and talk about how he interrupted Carly when they were having a conversation and use that as an example of what not to do when you're having a conversation.
You know, for most 8th grade girls, if they came home and found their 26-year-old brother dangling upside down from the ceiling over a giant robot made out of soda bottles, it'd be weird.
You're saying I'm abnormal.
Do I need to say it?
That right there is a good scene to show students and talk about ambiguous language. As she's explaining that anybody else who would come in may think this situation's strange or weird, you know, but for me, it's not so weird. And so then he makes an inference, draws a conclusion based on what she said, saying, oh, you think I'm such and such a way. And so her comment, do I need to say it? This is a great example of how we use and can pick up on clues, like in ambiguous language, when we're in social situations.
I dislocated my shoulder again. One sec. Yeah.
We can talk about problem solving in this situation and how that may not be the best solution in real life. Again. That's kind of a funny scene that I like to point out to my students. I'll pause it and I'll focus in on his facial expression at the end, and I'll ask them how he did, how he thinks he did, and how you know that based on his facial expression. And he's obviously feeling very proud of his performance. And we kind of analyze that situation and talk about whether or not that's something we would be proud of, or something that we may or may not be proud of in our performing. Again, exaggerated facial expressions, nonverbal communication skills, how that can be interpreted to an onlooker, could be construed as rude, inconsiderate. And then we talk about how the facial expressions change. And in this situation, I might mute it and talk about, here's another performer, and now they are up and they're cheering. Their nonverbal communication is giving a different message. One of the other areas that I like to target when I watch videos like this with my students is I'll have them talk about the show in narrative form. So tell me what happened, describe it to me. Maybe we'll write something about it. Or if you were Carly, what would you do? If you were Sam, if you were Freddie, putting themselves in somebody else's perspective. Again, there's so many different ways that the show can be mixed up to target different skills, even if it's somebody who's not on the spectrum, but somebody who has just a learning disability or who has a speech language impairment. You can target the same skills for a lot of different developmental language disorders, and it's a very motivational, age-appropriate activity for many students. So this is a problem that is in the show that presents itself, which is that videos of them talking bad about their teacher has been posted on the internet, and so now they have to do some problem solving. This is a good meta-linguistic activity that I can use with my students. I can have them dissect the situation and analyze what's going on and figure out the best way to solve the problem. So in this show, there are a lot of different examples of ambiguous language, multiple meaning words and jokes, figurative language, metaphors, similes, new vocabulary, examples of facial expressions, gestures, tone of voice, and many different slang terms, and essentially many different teaching tools all in one show to target different skills. So I hope you found this informational, and I hope you're going to be able to use this in your therapy. I have found it a very useful tool, and again, my students are very motivated, and their efforts just have increased because we get to use something that their friends are watching on TV, and it's something that most of the kids think is pretty cool to do in speech. So I hope that you guys enjoyed this, and thank you for watching.